Trying to prevent the ultimate terrorist attack, leaders from close to 60 countries joining President Obama to try and rid the world of nuclear weapons, and especially to keep them out of the hands of ISIS. Joining me now to discuss this all is James Woolsey, former CIA director under former President Bill Clinton. Director Woolsey, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you.
How likely is it that ISIS or a group like it could actually make a nuclear weapon?
They could make a nuclear weapon if they had the right handful of scientists, could make a simple one, such as the one we dropped on Hiroshima 50, 60, 70 years ago.
That's a simple one.
That was a simple one.
Pretty devastating.
Indeed, that particular weapon we dropped on Hiroshima in wartime without it ever having been tested in the history of the world. What was tested at Alamogordo the month before was a different kind, a plutonium weapon that really somewhat more sophisticated, more complex. But the weapon itself is probably not going to be obtained by a terrorist group very easily, because they have to get quite a bit of fissile material and they have to assemble it and be able to work with it and so forth. It's far more likely, I think, that they would come up with radiological material such as 20% enriched uranium from a hospital or something like that, and blow it up, scatter it around, and that would keep people from wanting to work or live in that area for many, many years.
For decades, yeah. You've been a critic of the Iran nuclear deal.
Yes.
President Obama's attempt to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. I'm sure you applaud the goal, but you disagree with the deal. President Obama, in a Washington Post editorial, said the Iran nuclear deal, quote, closes every single one of its paths to a nuclear weapon, and Iran is now being subjected to the most comprehensive inspection regimen ever negotiated to monitor a nuclear program. Do you disagree with that?
Fundamentally.
You do?
Pretty much every word, including the A's and the D's, as someone would say. First of all, the provisions about inspections are awful. If I am an inspector and you are the Iranians, and I say, I would like to look here, you can say, no, I've just decided to designate that a military facility, so Woolsey, you can't go there.
Has that happened yet that you know of?
Not that I know of yet, but the agreement, another problem with the agreement is that the paper, the material, the appendices that the statute requires be transmitted to the other people in the other countries in the negotiation has not been transmitted. And so the agreement really is not underway legally. Now, they've, I think, avoided so much of the legal requirements in putting this together that shouldn't be too surprising. But another thing that they've done is said that if, again, let's suppose that I'm an inspector and you're the Iranians, and I say, I really would like a sample drawn from this square kilometer up in your northern desert, because I've got some information I just want to look into there. They say, we'll provide you with a sample, and then they go down to their southern desert and provide the sample. Yeah. They do whatever they want, and that's the way the agreement is structured. It's fundamentally an awful agreement.
I want to get your view on Donald Trump's reaction, or Donald Trump's response, when asked about nuclear proliferation, the number of countries that have nuclear weapons. Take a listen to what he had to say to Anderson Cooper earlier this week.
It's been a U.S. policy, though, for decades to prevent Japan from getting nuclear weapons.
That might be a policy, but
South Korea as well.
Can I be honest with you? Maybe it's going to have to be time to change, because so many people, you have Pakistan has it, you have China has it. At some point, we have to say, you know what? We're better off if Japan protects itself against this maniac in North Korea. We're better off, frankly, if South Korea is going to start to protect itself.
Saudi Arabia, nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia, absolutely.
I've never heard a politician call for more countries to get nuclear weapons instead of fewer. What's your response?
Well, I agree with you and not with Mr. Trump. I think there are some countries we'd worry about more than others. Japan getting nuclear weapons would probably be somewhat like France having gotten them. It is not a likely to be a fundamental enemy of the United States.
But Saudi
for
Arabia?
A long time. But once you start expanding the numbers with the Saudis and others, the next time you have a crisis in the Middle East, instead of one country perhaps having a nuclear weapon, you may end up with 2 or 3 Sunni states and 2 or 3 Shiite states. And the passions and angers in some parts of the world have deep historical roots. I would just as soon not have a situation where more and more countries are getting nuclear weapons, and a crisis could go really haywire rather than just be an angry confrontation.
Ben Rhodes called it destabilizing. You agree with that?
I essentially agree with that.
All right. Former CIA Director James Woolsey, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Always good to have you here.